A millionaire marries a homeless woman for a stupid bet, yet on their wedding night, he's the one who breaks. He expected a game, a challenge, a paycheck of ego. But the moment he walked into their room and saw fear flash through her eyes, everything inside him shifted. He didn't touch her, because for the first time, he realized this woman wasn't some bet to win. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're tuning in from. We love seeing how our stories connect people from all around the world. Your comments and thoughts bring this community to life, and we're so grateful to have you on this journey with us. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, let's begin. The night should have been perfect. Beverly Hills glittered beneath chandeliers, cameras flashed, and the wealthiest people in the city floated through the gala like nothing could touch them. But Alexander Reeves wasn't looking at any of them. He stood alone on the balcony, jaw tight, staring down at a thin girl curled beside a street lamp, hugging a torn backpack to her chest to stay warm. He didn't know why he couldn't look away. Something about the way she held herself worn but unbroken pulled at him in a way he didn't want to admit. Bradley found him there, carrying a glass of champagne and a smirk sharp enough to cut glass. "You know what your problem is?" he said. "You only love yourself and your money." Alex didn't respond, but Bradley didn't need an invitation. He leaned over the railing, spotted the same girl beneath them, and laughed. "Tell you what, if you're so convinced you can control anything, marry her. 3 months. I'll wire you $5 million. Alex stiffened. People nearby turned their heads, sensing tension. Bradley knew exactly how to dig where it hurt back to a childhood Alex had spent years outrunning. The challenge wasn't about the girl, it was about pride, control, and Bradley knew Alex couldn't walk away from a public dare without looking weak. Alex's voice came out steady, colder than the wind rolling off Sunset Boulevard. "Fine. I'll do it. Over." Bradley raised his glass in victory. But Alex didn't wait. He left the gala, pushing through the crowds of sequins and perfume, and stepping straight into the night air. The contrast hit him warmth to cold, gold to gray. As he approached, the girl looked up, startled. She didn't shrink the way most people did around him. Her eyes were sharp, cautious, almost annoyed that he'd interrupted the small corner of peace she'd carved out. "I have a proposal," he said. "No thanks," she replied instantly. "I'm not for sale." Her voice was rough, tired, but firm. Alex faltered. No one talked to him like that. He tried again, choosing words carefully, but everything he said only seemed to make her walls rise higher. She turned away, hugging her backpack tighter. Later that night, when he learned her name Harper Lane and how long she had been living on the street, something in him twisted. It wasn't pity. It was recognition. A memory of sleeping in his mother's car years ago, pretending it was an adventure. A memory he'd buried deep beneath success and steel. He returned to her with the offer, $1 million for a 90-day marriage. Harper stared at the contract like it was poison. She didn't reach for it, didn't ask questions. She simply closed her eyes, as if fighting the humiliation of even considering it. Survival won. With trembling fingers, she signed. "Just so we're clear," she said, her voice low. "You don't own anything about me except my signature." The wedding happened the next morning at the courthouse. It took less than 10 minutes. No vows, no rings, no smiles. When her name was called, Harper lifted her chin, steady but distant. Alex watched her sign the final document and felt something tighten in his chest when she glanced up, catching his eyes with an intensity he couldn't read. Bradley stood outside the courthouse, clapping mockingly. Harper didn't look at him. Alex wished he hadn't. He drove her to the Malibu estate in silence. She sat stiffly, staring out the window at a world she had never belonged to. When they arrived, the house staff froze for a second, unsure of what to make of the woman in an oversized hoodie and worn sneakers standing beside the man who owned the place. Alex said, "From tonight on, this world is yours too." Harper stepped past him, voice steady but ice cold. "No, I'm only here for 90 days. "Oh." She disappeared down the hallway. Alex watched her go, a strange uneasiness spreading in his chest. He didn't know her, and yet, there was something in her eyes that refused to be ignored, something that made him wonder why, for the first time in years, he couldn't predict what came next, and why he suddenly cared. Harper barely recognized the woman staring back from the mirror, Clean skin, damp hair, no dirt under her nails. She lifted a hand, almost uncertain the reflection would follow. "Who am I in all this?" she whispered. "Not the woman from the street. Not the wife of a millionaire. Something in between, something that didn't feel real." Downstairs, the stylists Alex had hired waited with curling irons and brushes and clothes too expensive to touch. Harper kept flinching whenever someone came near her shoulders. She wasn't used to being handled gently. She wasn't used to being handled at all. Alex appeared in the doorway, intending to leave but stopping when he saw her sitting tense in the chair. He didn't say anything, just watched long enough to feel the wrongness of the scene, like she'd been dropped into a life she didn't agree to live. When Harper finally stepped out of the room, hair brushed, clothes fitted, Alex froze. Not because she looked pretty, she had always had something quietly striking about her, but because she looked like a person again, not a shadow on a sidewalk. Harper noticed his stare but didn't comment. She simply walked past him, chin high. At breakfast, Harper sat straight, eating slowly, leaving small portions on the side of her plate. Alex noticed. He also noticed she watched him from the corner of her eye, trying to understand him without getting too close. He caught her looking at the empty seat at the head of the table, his seat, but he remained in the corner, the same place he'd always sat since the day his mother died. Harper didn't know that, but she somehow sensed the isolation in the gesture. Later, during a so-called etiquette lesson meant to help her fit in, Harper snapped. She pushed the chair back, frustration spilling out. "I don't belong in a place where I have to change everything about myself just to breathe right." Alex expected anger to rise in him, but instead he said quietly, "You don't have to become someone else in one day." Harper didn't know what to do with that. It wasn't the answer she expected from a man like him. That night, she hummed softly while walking through the garden a faint, familiar melody. Alex stopped mid-sentence when he heard it. His mother used to hum the same tune on stormy nights. He followed the sound, but when Harper turned, startled, he simply nodded and stepped back, oddly shaken that she had touched a part of him he never showed anyone. In the kitchen later, Harper rolled up her sleeves and helped the staff wash dishes. They tried to stop her, but she insisted. Alex watched from the hallway, strangely moved. He didn't understand why her small acts hit him where nothing else ever had. Near midnight, a scream tore through the house. Alex ran downstairs to find Harper curled on the sofa, shaking, eyes wide with leftover terror. He didn't touch her. He simply sat down beside the couch, lowering himself slowly, leaving space but not distance. "I'll stay here," he said softly, "until you fall asleep." End quote. She stared at him, at the tired man in a crumpled shirt sitting on hardwood just to keep her from feeling alone. When morning light broke, Alex was asleep, head resting against the couch, his hand lying palm up near hers like he'd been guarding her all night. "Why do you care?" she asked when he finally woke. "You're my responsibility," he answered too quickly. But Harper wasn't stupid. She saw the truth flicker behind his eyes, and as she walked away, she whispered to herself, "That didn't feel like responsibility." She didn't know yet what it was, but she knew it was the beginning of something she wasn't ready to name. Alex stood outside the bedroom he was supposed to share with his new wife, one hand on the knob, the other braced against the doorframe as if something inside might swallow him whole. The house had gone quiet. Even the ocean beyond the cliff seemed to hold its breath. He wasn't sure why he hesitated. This was supposed to be simple, a contract, a bed, a night like any other. Instead, his chest tightened with a heaviness he didn't recognize. Inside, Harper stood barefoot on the carpet, arms wrapped around herself, breathing shallow and sharp. She stared at the door like it was a threat. Her heart hammered, not because Alex frightened her, but because nights behind closed doors had never ended well for her. Darkness made memories claw their way back. The knob turned. Alex stepped inside. Harper flinched so violently she nearly hit the dresser. "Don't come closer," she said, voice cracking as she backed into the corner. Her shoulders trembled. She couldn't hide it no matter how hard she tried. Alex froze mid-step. "Harper, I'm not going to." She shook her head, tears spilling. "Please, just stay there." When her coat slipped off her shoulder, Alex's breath caught. A scar, long, pale, jagged, ran down her back like a history carved into skin. Not an accident, not a childhood scrape. Something inflicted, something she had survived. Alex took 3 slow steps back, raising both hands. "I hear you. I won't touch you. Not tonight. Not ever. Unless you want me to." Harper slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, hands shielding her face as if bracing for impact. The most powerful man in Malibu sank to the floor across from her, leaving several feet of quiet between them. He didn't ask questions, didn't push. He just sat, matching the rhythm of his breathing to hers until her panic softened. When she finally looked at him, she didn't see desire or entitlement. She saw something she hadn't seen in years, someone choosing not to harm her even when they had the power to. Alex swallowed hard. "My mom used to say," he murmured, eyes on the carpet. "Touching someone who's afraid can be a kind of violence. So, I'm staying here." Harper rested her forehead on her knees, exhausted. "Why do you care?" she whispered. Alex hesitated. "Because tonight, I can see how much the world has already hurt you." Harper blinked through the blur of tears. "Or because I'm the woman you bet on?" He shut his eyes, jaw clenching, the silence between them speaking louder than an admission. That silence hurt her more than anger would have. Minutes later, her body slumped sideways. The adrenaline had burned out, leaving nothing but emptiness. Alex didn't think he moved, but he paused just before lifting her, giving her one last second to flinch. She didn't. Carefully, he scooped her up, holding her like she might break. He laid her on the bed, pulling a blanket over her with hands that shook more than he wanted to admit. He didn't stay beside her. He took the sofa, long legs folded awkwardly, head against the armrest, choosing the discomfort like penance. His hand rested on the floor beside the bed, close enough that if she reached out, she'd find him there. Hours later, Harper stirred. Her eyes landed on Alex, shirt wrinkled, face soft in sleep, hand still extended toward her like an unspoken promise of safety. Something inside her cracked. "Why are you making it so hard to hate you?" she murmured into the dark. Alex's eyelashes fluttered, but he didn't move. He only let a single breath slip out, one that made it painfully clear he had heard every word. Breakfast the next morning tasted nothing like the awkward silence in the room. Harper sat on one end of the table, Alex on the other, and the air between them felt fragile, as if one wrong word could break something neither of them understood yet. When Alex finally spoke, his voice barely rose above a whisper. "Did you sleep any better?" Harper stared at her plate. "Having someone there helped more than I expected." She wished she could take it back the moment it left her mouth. Vulnerability had never been safe for her. Alex glanced up, startled. He tried to hide the flicker of warmth in his eyes, but failed. Harper felt her face heat and looked away, angry at herself for letting him see any part of her softness. Before either could say more, Bradley arrived. His voice echoed from the foyer, loud and careless, dragging the atmosphere back into something sharp. Alex excused himself, but Harper stayed at the staircase, drawn by the sound of her name being tossed around like a joke. "You're getting sentimental, Reeves," Bradley mocked. "Don't forget how this started. She was a bet, a challenge, a 3-month experiment." Harper didn't move, couldn't move. The words sliced through her, reopening wounds she thought she'd managed to hide. She waited for Alex to deny it, defend her, explain. But Alex said nothing fast enough, only a strained, "It's different now," spoken too quietly and too late. Something inside Harper broke. She ran to her room, her breath shaking, her fingers trembling as she shoved loose clothes into her old torn backpack. She refused to cry, not for Bradley's cruelty, not for the world that had always judged her, but for the one person she had allowed to get close. She left a note on the bed. "I don't belong here. I never did. And I never belonged to you." Climbing the back fence was easy. She'd done it all her life, escaping places where she was unwanted. The difference this time was that leaving hurt. By the time Alex found the note, color drained from his face. He tore through the house, calling her name until staff exchanged frightened looks. No one had ever seen Alexander Reeves lose composure, but this wasn't composure, this was fear. When someone mentioned seeing her heading toward the highway, Alex bolted out the door. He didn't take a jacket. He didn't take a car at first. He just ran, heart pounding with a clarity that terrified him. He wasn't afraid of losing the bet. He was afraid of losing her. Meanwhile, Harper wandered along the coastline, waves crashing blindly against the rocks below. She didn't feel the cold. She barely felt the ground under her feet. All she could feel were the memories she tried to bury Alex, covering her with a coat, Alex sitting on the floor with her, Alex looking at her scar with something close to heartbreak. "I liked him," she whispered to the wind. "Before I knew any of it, I liked him." The truth stung more than the betrayal. By afternoon, Her strength gave out. She collapsed onto a bench at Union Station, head spinning, stomach hollow, body shutting down. The lights blurred. The voices around her faded. She slumped sideways, consciousness slipping. Moments later, Alex burst into the station, chest heaving, calling her name with raw panic. People stared as he ran through the rows of seats like a man searching for a missing piece of himself. When he spotted her body crumpled on the bench, he dropped to his knees so fast the impact echoed. "Harper!" His hands hovered before touching her, remembering her fear, then gently cupped her face. "Please, don't do this. Don't leave me." "I've noted." He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she might vanish again. His voice cracked against her hair. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have said something sooner. I should have protected you." He carried her through the station, pushing through crowds, shouting for help as tears he didn't feel fall hit her shoulder. As the ER doors swung shut between them, Alex stood outside, fists clenched, shaking with a fear he had never known, not of failure, not of humiliation, but of a world where Harper didn't exist. Alex stood outside the emergency room with both hands pressed against the door, knuckles white, breath ragged and uneven. He didn't even realize his fingers had cracked and bled from clenching so hard. All he could hear was the doctor's voice repeating the same words. Severe dehydration, hypoglycemia, exhaustion. Each word landed like a punch. Harper had collapsed because she'd run from him, because he'd pushed her to the edge without even meaning to. When they finally moved her to a recovery room, Alex slipped inside as quietly as a ghost. Harper lay on the bed, pale and still, her chest rising in thin, shallow breaths. He pulled a chair close, not daring to touch her at first, but the moment he saw the way her fingers twitched like she was still fighting sleep, he reached forward and wrapped his hand around hers lightly, carefully, almost reverently. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice breaking in a way he hadn't heard from himself since he was a child. "I was wrong. You never deserved any of this. Too well." The words dredged up memories he'd buried deep, nights spent in his mother's car, pretending the cramped back seat was a fort rather than shelter. The day she died and he swore he'd never rely on anyone again. The vow he made to himself to become untouchable. Yet here he was, undone by a woman he barely knew but felt tethered to in a way he couldn't explain. He lifted Harper's hand to his cheek, letting it rest there as if grounding himself. He didn't care how it looked. He didn't care who saw. All he knew was that losing her felt like a cliff edge he wasn't ready for. When Harper finally stirred, he was still there, head bowed near the mattress, fingers intertwined with hers, as if afraid she might disappear if he loosened his grip. Her eyelids fluttered open, confusion softening into something more fragile when she saw him. "Alex?" His head shot up. Relief washed over him so quickly it almost hurt. "Are you in pain?" he asked, voice unsteady. She swallowed, eyes drifting to their joined hands. "Why did you come for me?" "Because I couldn't stand not knowing if you were safe," he said truthfully. "Because I kept imagining you hurt. Because losing track of you." He cut himself off before the rest spilled out. "Because it terrified me. Because I care about you more than I should." Harper looked at him, searching for a lie, but found only fear real. Raw fear etched into his face. She pulled her hand back slightly, not fully withdrawing it, but enough to remind them both of the distance still between them. "Are you here because I'm your responsibility, or because of something else?" Her voice wavered, split between wanting and doubting. Alex didn't answer in words. He simply tightened his hand around hers, gently but firmly, letting the silence speak. 2 days later, Harper was discharged. Alex helped her into the car with a kind of care reserved for someone breakable. At the mansion, he led her to a newly prepared bedroom next to his instead of across the hall. She paused at the doorway, fingers grazing the frame, as if acknowledging a line neither of them had dared cross until now. That night, she woke with a shiver. A soft blanket lay over her shoulders, one she hadn't had when she fell asleep. It smelled faintly of Alex's cologne. When she wandered down to the library, she found him asleep on the couch, one arm tucked under his head, the other lying loosely across his stomach as if he'd been guarding the room until she came down. She stared at him for a long moment before whispering, almost annoyed at herself. "You're making it really hard to dislike you." She draped a blanket over him. As she turned to leave, Alex's eyes opened just enough to watch her walk away. He touched the spot where her hand had brushed his shoulder, feeling a warmth that scared him and soothed him all at once. He looked down the hall toward her room and murmured, I'm already in too deep, Harper, and I'm fixing everything. All of it. Sunlight spilled across the art studio Alex had set up for her, filling the room with quiet morning gold. Harper stood in the center holding a paintbrush like it was something delicate and forbidden. She hadn't painted since before her life had fallen apart. Now, for the first time in years, the urge to create something beautiful returned like a shy pulse beneath her ribs. Her hand moved without thinking, sketching a silhouette she recognized only when she stepped back. Broad shoulders, a tilted head. Alex, standing with his back to her, her breath caught. "I really do like him," she whispered, startled by her own confession. Behind her, Alex stood at the door, watching without making a sound. He wasn't looking at the painting. He was looking at her, the way she concentrated, the way light framed her hair, the way her shoulders relaxed when she forgot to be afraid. He didn't step inside, afraid the moment might break if he intruded. Harper sensed his presence but didn't turn. She didn't trust her face not to betray her feelings. Later, in the kitchen, Harper reached for a plate on a high shelf, wobbling on her toes. Alex appeared out of nowhere, instinctively stepping forward as her balance slipped. His hand shot up as if to steady her, but he stopped himself just inches away. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded, but the space between them felt charged. Too close, too warm. A thin, invisible thread pulled tight, and both of them felt it. That evening, Harper cooked dinner, simple pasta. Nothing fancy, but when Alex sat down and tasted it, he froze. She worried she'd ruined it until he said, voice quiet but sure, "This is the best meal I've had in a long time." She flushed. "You're only saying that because I'm new to cooking." "No," he murmured. "Because it tastes like it meant something to you." Harper smiled, small but real. It made Alex's chest tighten in a way he couldn't shake off. After dinner, they found themselves in the library again. Harper finally asked, "Why do you sit in that corner instead of the head of the table?" Alex looked down at his hands. "When my mom died, I couldn't stand sitting where she used to sit. It felt wrong, so I stayed in the corner and never moved back." Harper slowly lowered herself into the seat across from him, voice gentle. "Being strong doesn't always mean staying alone." The words landed deeper than she realized. In the following days, Harper caught Alex quietly helping the house staff carry heavy boxes, something he never would have done before she arrived. She stared at him from across the hall, realizing he wasn't changing because of guilt. He was changing because of her. One rainy afternoon, Harper sat in the library reading while the storm tapped against the windows. Alex entered and sat 2 chairs away, neither speaking. The silence felt warm, not empty. When she finally glanced up, Alex was already looking at her. Their eyes met, lingered, then both looked away too quickly, afraid their hearts would betray them if the moment lasted a second longer. That night, Harper screamed again from a nightmare. Alex burst into her room, expecting her to flinch, but she didn't. Not this time. She wiped her tears and whispered, "Can you stay a little?" He sat on the chair beside her bed like before, keeping the respectful distance he'd promised. She hesitated, then whispered again, softer, "You don't have to sit that far." Alex froze. Harper lifted the edge of the blanket, inviting not romantically, but trustingly. Alex pulled his chair closer, just enough for her to feel protected without feeling trapped. The fear eased out of her shoulders. The darkness no longer felt so threatening, and for the first time, Alex allowed himself to breathe normally, knowing she wasn't running from him tonight. Harper woke with the faintest sense of warmth brushing her cheek. When her eyes opened, she saw Alex asleep in the chair beside her bed, his hand resting near hers as if guarding her through the night. He looked nothing like the man she met at the courthouse. His shoulders were slumped, his jaw uncharacteristically soft, exhaustion written everywhere. Harper stared longer than she meant to, longer than she had any right to, and in that silent moment, she admitted the truth she'd been avoiding since the night he sat down on the floor, refusing to leave her alone with her fear. She loved him, and she shouldn't. She slipped out of bed quietly, deciding she would thank him today properly, not because she owed him anything, but because gratitude felt like the first step toward healing. She didn't realize it would also be the day her heart would break. Downstairs, Alex was already in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, making coffee the way she liked. When he saw her, something bright and unguarded flickered across his face. "You could have slept in," he murmured, handing her the warm mug. The way he said it, it wasn't control, it wasn't politeness, it was care. Real, soft, uncalculated care. Harper felt her cheeks warm and lowered her eyes to the coffee. They sat together in quiet, but it wasn't silence. It was the kind of stillness that held 1,000 unspoken possibilities. Anyone walking in could see it clearly. Something between them had shifted, but that fragile calm fractured the moment Bradley walked into the mansion. Alex stiffened instantly. Harper started up the stairs, but the sound of Bradley's voice carried through the hallway. She froze midway. 3 months left, Reeves, Bradley said with that poisonous smirk. Then you walk away from the homeless project you married, right? Harper felt her lungs collapse. Each word sliced deeper than the last. Alex's voice came low, strained. Shut up, Bradley. Things aren't the same anymore. Bradley laughed. Don't tell me you actually care about her? Come on, she was a dare. A stupid bet. Don't rewrite the story now just because you got sentimental. Harper's hand gripped the railing so tight her knuckles whitened. She sank to the step, breath shattering in her chest. She had known the truth, but hearing it like this, cruel, cold, undeniable, felt like betrayal in its purest form. She stepped forward, unable to hide the tremor in her voice. Is that how it started? She asked. Bradley spun around. Alex froze. Harper, Alex began, reaching toward her. She stepped back immediately. Just answer me. Alex swallowed hard. Yes, but... She cut him off, her voice breaking even as she fought to keep it steady. I changed before you did. I cared before you did. That's the part that hurts. He moved again, desperate to bridge the gap between them, but she raised a hand to stop him. If he took one more step, she feared she would collapse. Harper turned and ran, ignoring Alex calling her name until his voice cracked. She threw clothes into a bag with trembling hands, tears falling silently. She refused to let herself sob. She refused to let him see how deeply he'd carved into her. She left one sentence on his desk. I do not belong here, and I do not belong to you. Then she slipped out the back gate into the cold night air. Alex found the note minutes later. Something inside him broke with an audible, physical pain. He stormed through the mansion, shouting her name, searching every hallway, every corner like a man possessed. When the housekeeper whispered that Harper had walked toward the coastal road, Alex bolted outside and ran until his lungs burned. Harper, meanwhile, walked until her legs trembled beneath her. She hated that every memory rising in her mind was of Alex, his gentleness, his quiet gestures, his voice softening when he forgot to guard himself. The moments that made her trust him, the moments that made her fall, and the moment that destroyed everything. By the time she reached the curve of the coastline, her heart hurt more than her blisters. I wish I'd never met him, she whispered. It wouldn't hurt this much. The chapter closed with Alex speeding onto the highway, panic choking every breath, searching for the woman he only now realized he couldn't live without. Rain started as a drizzle, then turned into a downpour harsh enough to sting Harper's skin. She kept walking, clutching her thin jacket tight around her, her steps uneven. Every streetlight seemed to blur. Every sound felt distant. The betrayal throbbed through her chest like a bruise she couldn't press without wincing. She found herself at Union Station, ducking inside only because her body had reached its limit. People hurried past her like she was invisible, but she barely noticed. She sank onto a cold metal bench, hugging her knees. Why did it hurt so much? Because she hadn't just trusted Alex. She'd given him pieces of herself she thought she'd buried her vulnerability, her hope, her belief that maybe she could belong somewhere again. She remembered Alex's quiet footsteps when she'd woken up from nightmares, the way he offered space without distance, care without pressure. She remembered him sitting on the floor that night, refusing to move until she calmed. She remembered his eyes when he saw her scar pain for her, not curiosity. I loved him, she whispered. I loved him before I even understood what that meant. The admission brought tears she could no longer hold back. Her vision wavered, the world tilted, and then everything went dark. Across the city, Alex was tearing through traffic, windows fogged from his own breath, shouting Harper's name from the car even though he knew she couldn't hear him. Fear strangled him. He'd never been terrified of losing anything, not money, not power, not people, until her. The streets blurred together as he scanned sidewalks, bus stops, alleyways. Nothing, 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 until he saw the flashing red lights of an ambulance outside Union Station. He sprinted inside. Harper! His voice cracked as he ran down the rows of benches. "Harper!" He spotted her collapsed on the bench, limp and frighteningly still. His knees buckled as he dropped beside her. "No, no, no, no." He gathered her into his arms, pulling her close, drenched rainwater soaking into his shirt as he held her. He didn't care who watched. "Stay with me, please." Her eyelids didn't flutter. Her lips didn't move. He pressed his forehead to hers, whispering, "I'm sorry. I'm so damn sorry. Just give me another chance." When paramedics reached for her, he refused to let go until they had the stretcher ready. He climbed into the ambulance, gripping her hand so tightly that his knuckles shook. When the medic asked, "Are you family?" Alex's voice was immediate and certain. "She's my wife." And for the first time, the word didn't feel like a contract. It felt like the truth. Hours later, Harper's eyes fluttered open in a dim hospital room. Alex was slumped at her bedside, soaked clothes replaced but hair still dripping slightly, as if he'd refused to leave long enough to dry completely. His hand remained wrapped around hers, thumb brushing lightly against her skin even in sleep. "Alex," she whispered, voice raw. His eyes snapped open. Relief crashed across his face, messy and unfiltered. "Harper," he breathed, leaning closer. "Are you okay? Are you hurting? You found me?" "I searched every street in this city," he said, voice trembling, "and I would have searched every street in the world." Tears blurred Harper's eyes again, but not from pain this time. "Why do you care this much? After everything?" He didn't hesitate. "Because I love you, and I should have said it long before today." The words settled between them, trembling, unsure, terrified, and achingly real. She looked away, wiping a tear. "Love doesn't erase what happened." "No, it doesn't," he agreed quietly. "But I'm not asking you to erase anything. I'm asking for a chance to make things right." When she was released, Harper agreed to return to the mansion only because she needed rest, and because part of her still clung to the Alex she'd begun to know. But she kept a soft distance, a boundary he respected even when it pained him. Alex left flowers at her door each morning, small gestures, no pressure. Harper painted again, and one night she caught herself sketching his face with a softness she hadn't meant to reveal. When Alex saw the half-finished portrait, something warm and hopeful flickered in his eyes, but he didn't comment, afraid to push too soon. One night, Harper whispered as he left her room, "Don't disappear on me again. I go." Alex paused in the doorway. "Then let me stay." Harper didn't answer with words. She simply lifted her blanket slightly, not inviting him in, but inviting him closer. And Alex stepped forward, knowing their next storm was already gathering because the world was about to learn about the bet that started it all. Harper didn't breathe when the recording played. She simply stood frozen, eyes locked on the television as Bradley's voice echoed through the room like a cruel verdict. "All he has to do is marry her for 3 months, and he gets $5 million. The words replayed, stabbing deeper each time. Harper felt her knees weaken, her pulse pounding in her ears. She didn't even hear Alex rush in. She only saw the panic on his face when he spotted the screen. "Harper, wait, please. I had no idea that recording would ever." She stepped back. "So it's true," she whispered. "I was a game to you. Again." "Axta." Alex reached out instinctively, then stopped himself, fear in his eyes. "Let me explain." But Harper felt something inside her collapse. The humiliation, the betrayal, the memory of every man who had once promised safety and delivered hurt, it all came roaring back and swallowed her whole. The next hours unfolded like a nightmare she watched from outside her own body. News channels plastered her face everywhere, labeling her with names meant to bruise: homeless girl, gold digger, con artist. Social media mocked her clothes, her hair, her scars. Strangers dissected her life as if she were nothing more than a spectacle. Harper stared into the bathroom mirror until her reflection blurred. "They're right," she choked. "I'm nothing. I never should have come here. Alex tried talking to her, gentle, patient, desperate, but every time he stepped into the room, she flinched without meaning to, and each flinch destroyed him. Then came the board meeting. Alex returned late that night, shoulders heavy, eyes hollow. Harper overheard the voices through the thin office door. Shareholders telling him the scandal was ruining the company's reputation, demanding he file for divorce if he wanted to stay CEO. "If you don't end the marriage immediately," one man said, "we will vote to remove you." Harper pressed a hand to her mouth, heart twisting. She wanted to scream that she would leave, that she never meant to destroy anything. But the next words she heard were Alex's. "Then remove me," he said. "I'm not divorcing her." Silence followed, thick and stunned. Harper's breath broke. Hours later, Jenna found Harper in the hallway, pale and trembling. The assistant spoke gently. "He chose you long before today. You just didn't see it." Harper shook her head. "I'm not worth that kind of sacrifice." She found Alex in the library, sitting alone with his hands clenched, head bowed. She had never seen him look so defeated, not even when he carried her into the hospital. "I'm leaving," she said, voice steady only because it had shattered so thoroughly. "You need to protect your company. I don't belong here." Alex stood slowly. "And what do you think I'll have left if you go?" Her throat tightened. She turned away, afraid her resolve would break under the weight of his eyes. "You'll be okay eventually." "I won't," he said quietly. "I won't be okay without you." Harper bit her lip hard, forcing herself to walk out. But the decision didn't save him. The vote happened at noon the next day. The board suspended Alex indefinitely. Harper heard the news from the staff and collapsed into a chair, breath stolen from her lungs. He lost everything, because of me, and yet he didn't seem angry. He found her near the back of the house at dusk, staring at the sunset with the heaviness of someone trying to disappear. Alex didn't move closer. He kept his distance, voice soft. "If you want to leave, I won't stop you. But loving you isn't something I can turn off. It's not something I want to." Obeezer. Harper closed her eyes, tears slipping down. "Why does loving you hurt this much?" Alex didn't answer. He just stood there, the ocean wind catching his shirt, the sky dimming behind him, two broken souls drifting near each other but afraid to touch. And night swallowed them both. Harper didn't sleep. She packed her bag quietly before dawn, folding each piece of clothing as if the slower she moved, the longer she could delay the inevitable. She paused outside Alex's door, her hand hovering just inches from the wood. She wanted to tell him everything, how she loved him, how leaving was killing her, how she didn't want to go even though she thought she should. Inside, Alex sat awake in the dark, staring at the empty chair where Harper used to curl up with a book. He hadn't slept either. He told himself he was giving her space, but the truth was simple. He was afraid. Afraid she'd walk out and never come back. At sunrise, Harper stepped outside with her bag slung over her shoulder. The air was cold, crisp enough to sting. She walked slowly toward the front gate, each step heavier than the last. When she reached for the handle, Alex appeared in the doorway behind her, his voice breaking. "You're leaving me again?" She turned. His eyes were red, but not from anger, from sleeplessness, fear, the weight of everything he'd lost. She swallowed hard. "I have to. You've already paid too much because of me." He shook his head, taking one step forward and stopping. "And who's going to protect you?" Harper wiped her cheeks with her sleeve. "I'm trying to save you." "You don't need to save me," he whispered. "You just need to stay." She closed her eyes. "I'm scared, Alex. What if I'm not enough for your world? What if I ruin your life more than I already have?" "You're the only good thing in my life," he said. "You're the only thing I want to fight for." She opened her mouth, but no words came. Alex turned, walked into the house, and returned with a paper in hand. He pressed it against her chest. It was the official notice of his suspension. "This is what I lost," he said, "and I'll lose the rest if that's what it takes. But I will not lose you." Harper stared at the document, her vision warping through tears. For the first time, she realized that Alex wasn't choosing between her and his life. She was his life. Harper tore the paper cleanly down the middle. "If they don't want you," she said through her tears, "then we'll build something new. But don't let go of me." Alex laughed a soft, cracked sound before tears filled his eyes. Harper reached out her hand first. It was small, trembling, unsure, but it was hers. Alex took it like a vow. The kiss didn't come right away. They simply stood there, hands clasped, two broken hearts finally still. Later, they left Los Angeles behind. They drove north to a quiet mountain town, to a lakeside cabin where no cameras, no board members, no past bets existed. Harper painted again. Alex learned how to chop wood and burn toast. They healed like people do, slowly, imperfectly, together. One morning, Harper woke to sunlight spilling across the water and realized she wasn't afraid anymore. She found Alex outside by the dock, skipping stones, hair tousled by the wind. "Alex," she called softly. He turned, and she stepped closer. If sharing a life is still something you want, then I want that too. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small ring, simple, handcrafted from silver. I made it in town, he said, not because of a contract, not because of a bet, but because I want to spend every day choosing you. Harper covered her mouth, tears streaming. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will. Their second wedding was nothing like the first. No courthouse, no signatures, no watching eyes, just two people standing at the edge of a quiet lake, promising to stay even when staying wasn't easy. That night, truly their first wedding night, Harper placed Alex's hand over the scar on her back and whispered, "Thank you for never touching me until I was ready." He kissed her forehead. "Thank you for staying long enough to let me try." They lay together under the soft glow of cabin light, two survivors who had learned to stop running from love, because sometimes the most extraordinary beginnings come from the most broken places, and the people who stay after everything falls apart, those are the ones worth choosing again and again. There's something quietly powerful about choosing hope after life has knocked you flat. Healing never arrives in grand moments. It slips in through small gestures, soft words, and the simple courage to stay one more day. And somehow, when you stop running from what scares you, life has a way of giving you something worth holding on to. If this story met you at the right moment today, maybe on a rainy evening or a quiet bus ride home, tell me where you're listening from. I'd love to know the place or the kind of day you're in right now. And if you'd like to stay for more stories that remind us we're not walking through the hard parts alone, feel free to subscribe. I'll be right here, sharing the next chapter with you.